Hey everyone, this is Brian Moore from PM Square coming at you with another Planning Analytics tutorial. If you like what you see, be sure and connect with me on LinkedIn where my URL is BrianPM2. Happy to answer any questions you may have over there. Let's jump right into it. Today's tutorial is on Planning Analytics Workspace TI Editor. We are on PAW version 55. If you haven't made the switch over to developing in PAW, I implore you to do so. You're going to see a lot of very cool user-friendly features today in the tutorial. And it is definitely the way of the future. It's where IBM is going. So be sure and start developing your skills within PAW. And you'll be much better served for the future. All right, so first thing we're going to talk about here is the ability to create a process. If I am not in edit mode, I cannot create a process. So I'm looking to right-click the word processes. And that gives me the ability to create a process, which I'll cancel out on, or also the ability to edit settings. Edit settings is setting the security for your TI processes. So we won't get into that, but when you're ready to lock down security for your processes, that would be where you go. All right, we do have a process dragged onto the canvas already, and we notice a little bit different look than we're used to. We do have the drop down, which allows you to access any process within the system, or within that particular server. So that is very handy that we don't need to have multiple windows open like in Architect, and easily toggle and select through those different processes. I do wish this bar was a little bit wider so I could see more of that text, maybe something IBM can fix, or maybe a setting that I'm missing. For our sample process here, we have we're on the data source tab, and that also looks a little different. We have graphical icons here instead of the vertical list we're used to. So we have no data source, cube is a data source, dimension, file, and ODBC, just like we're used to seeing. For the tutorial, we're going to get into file as a data source, and then later we'll do an ODBC. So in file, there's a list of files that have already been loaded, if there are any. For this sample system, we just have one file. We want to bring in a new one, we can just have a Windows folder and drag the CSV file right into this area, or click to browse to pick out that file. So once we've selected that, click on the next on the far right, and we see the screen that we're used to in terms of filling out the nuance of that particular CSV or flat file. I'm going to select one header record. You can also select the delimiter as well as the quote character. And we get to the final tab here, and this is loading the preview, but we also notice we see our variable screen combined. So it's very nice to have our 10 preview records on the same tab as our variables so that we get a better idea of what that column is all about. You can easily edit those names, DID, DCity, and we'd be able to easily update those by tabbing left to right. We can also update our strings and our numerics. Clicking just the first letter gets you switched over, so that can be very handy as well. All right, and then if we refresh the preview, it asks us if we want to refresh the variables like we're used to. We get that pop up. We're going to ignore this one for now. I'm going to jump back to the beginning, and we're going to do ODBC data source this time. So let's wipe out all those changes. And we're going to select from our previously already created ODBC sources. So Bacon 2020 Go Sales. We got Bacon coming up in a month here. Be sure and ask us about it. Happy to invite you. And also we want to look way at the bottom of the screen to fill in our credentials so that it doesn't continue to prompt us for those. So it's nice to save those credentials within the process. Next, fill out our query in the next screen, and then jump to the test and preview, and we see the similar combined preview records with our variables. So that is all filled out and ready to go. Next, we're going to jump over to the parameters tab, which has its own tab now, but it's identical to how we're used to, with being able to have a name, prompt question, numeric versus string type, and then a default value. There's no parameters in this one, so we'll go ahead and delete that out. And finally, in the script tab, what do we notice? Colors. Love the colors. Thank you, IBM. TI Editor, no longer in black and white. The colors give us a lot of context clues here. Green being for remark characters. We have a light blue for variables within the code. We have a red for constants, and then we have a dark blue for data source references. Excellent having those colors in there. Makes it very easy to see within the code. All right, next we are going to test out adding a process error. Now we see that our function turns pink. It's a recognized function. And I'm going to go ahead and run this process. Let's save. We also have the ability to validate the code without saving. So we just wanted to validate, make sure our code is syntactically correct. We can do that. Of course, we can do save as well. Looks like all of our code is syntactically correct. When I press run, I want you to notice that our only feedback is really a small icon we're going to see in the list of processes. And we see that we get a quick error there. What does it say? Metadata procedure line 4. I know exactly where that is. Why? Because we have numbers in the column as well. Very nice to have those numbers so that I'm not using the go to line feature from Architect. Quickly, I can find that I have an error. Metadata line 4. Let's get rid of that. And again, I'm going to save and run. And this time it's going to run a little bit longer, so we'll get a chance to see that icon I'm talking about right here with the plus. So very little feedback in terms of what the process is doing. Not a lot of folks like that. They do like the feedback that Architect and the traditional TI process would give us. But you get a process completed successfully message at the end, and that tells us that it ran successfully. All right, so that covers both the colors, the numbers on the left-hand side, and of course our ability to quickly troubleshoot what line is the problem child. Last thing we'll get into here is FX and the ellipsis on the far right. So some added usability features. If I click the FX, I see that it gives us the full glossary of TI functions right there, handy, ready to go in categories. So I don't have to dig up my reference manual or go to Google. So that's very nice to have. And lastly, we have the ellipsis, and that gives us the ability to line wrapping. So if we wanted to wrap code on multiple lines, display shortcut keys, which we'll spend some time on. We love these shortcut keys, especially the first one, control space, gives you a text completion. So for example, if I'm typing dimension element component add, and I don't really remember the rest of it, I just go control space bar and it gives me the list of possible candidates. If I say dimension element insert, dimension element component add, I should say, not only does it complete, but also gives me all the arguments in order. So excellent. I don't have to look that up in the reference manual. I just have to replace these arguments with the appropriate values, and I'm good to go. Love that feature. Thank you, IBM. All right, other items I'll highlight in the handy edit keys is we have the comment, uncomment, ability to delete, ability to indent. All those we've had already, but this is the ability to do them in bulk, which we love. So let's say we wanted to comment all of these at the same time. You can shift click that whole section and for control /on, control /off. Love that ability. Maybe somebody didn't indent their code or their nested ifs. It'd be nice to be able to bulk indent a bunch of lines at the same time. That's control hard bracket. Love those features. There's also some Windows features as well, like navigation keys, control A to select everything, and some search and replace tools as well. So if you need to replace S-cube throughout all your code, you could quickly do that with those hotkeys. So excellent feature there. Let's turn off the hotkeys. And a couple more things. We have enable security access that allows us to write code that would update security. So we have to turn that on using this setting. If we forget that setting, it won't work. So I want to make sure and turn that on. That's disclosed in the PAW 49 release notes. You can read through some details there. You have to be an admin or a modeler to be able to do that. And last but certainly not least, the ability to change font. Why code in boring font when you can switch to Comic Sans? Who doesn't love Comic Sans? So ability to change the font of your code, it's in there as well. Hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. Be sure and subscribe to our channel at PM Square on YouTube. And thanks again for coming. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time.